Can you sing along the 5 Pusha T records right now? His records.
Yes.
His records?
Yeah.
Name
I love
them.
Pusha. Nostalgia.
Oh, you was a Pusha T fan.
If you know, you
I
know.
didn't know he had fans like
No.
that. Can you name 5 Pusha T records? No,
Dreaming of
his
the
record.
past.
Pusha T, I love your soul, my dog. You're not in my top 50. You might be in Charlemagne's top 50 and things like that.
Pusha top
But
50.
you haven't done that much for me in my life. Like I didn't never want to be like Pusha. I never had a Pusha moment in my life. I never thought like you dig. Like where I'm from, niggas want to be like you if you was really that.
The moment Jim Jones decided to play with Nas's name, everybody knew he was stepping into territory he wasn't built to handle. Because Nas ain't just another rapper. He's hip-hop royalty, a legend standing on a 30-year foundation built on skill, storytelling, and unmatched respect. So when Jim started talking reckless in interviews, acting like Nas wasn't relevant, acting like Nas didn't have classic albums stacked through generations, and acting like the culture wasn't still rocking with him heavy, fans watched the clip like, oh yeah, Jim about to get cooked for this one. And that's exactly what happened, because Pusha T wasted no time stepping in, and the way he shut Jim down had the whole internet buzzing. It wasn't loud, it wasn't messy, it wasn't emotional, it was surgical. Pusha stepped up and made it clear that disrespecting Nas wasn't something the culture was gonna let slide, especially coming from someone who had nowhere near the resume, nowhere near the lyricism, and nowhere near the impact that Nas has delivered for decades. Jim Jones tried to make it sound like Nas wasn't moving the needle, like younger fans weren't aware of who he was, and like his music didn't matter today. But that's where Jim messed up, because Nas stays relevant without trying, without forcing trends, without chasing TikTok moments, and without gimmicks. His catalog stands on its own. He earned his stripes through timeless music, bars with depth, and albums that shaped entire eras of rap. Nas doesn't need to remind anybody who he is. The culture knows. And the fact that Jim tried to downplay that made a lot of people feel like he wasn't speaking from truth. He was speaking from jealousy, frustration, or maybe even a need to stir up attention. Because let's be real, Jim's biggest records don't come close to Nas's catalog in influence, reach, or longevity. So when he threw those comments, it looked like he was punching up, not speaking facts.
Do you like the new song?
No, but you know.
You don't like Ace Trumpets?
What's so great about it?
It's so good.
It's good?
It's so, oh man.
It's good?
So yeah, there's something going on that you ain't tell us about, bro.
It's good in what? A nostalgic value of it?
You don't think Ace Trumpets is hard?
I don't believe them.
Oh.
But that's a whole nother story. I don't want to downplay nobody's craft or their music. I want to uplift
ain't heavy
everybody and things like that.
Mm.
But I don't listen to their music. I never have.
That's where Pusha T came in. He heard the disrespect, he saw the viral clip, and he wasn't about to let one of the greatest artists alive get minimized by someone still trying to prove himself. Pusha got on interviews and made it clear, Nas is a pillar of hip-hop, someone whose contribution is bigger than whatever Jim was trying to make it seem. And Pusha didn't have to yell. He spoke from a place of knowledge, skill, and credibility that only a true lyricist can carry. He said Nas's influence is woven through every generation of rap, whether people realize it or not. From the sound to the storytelling to the structure of modern lyricism, Nas shaped that blueprint. And Pusha basically told Jim that not only was he wrong, he was out of pocket for even bringing Nas into a conversation he didn't belong in. Fans agreed instantly. The internet turned against Jim so fast that he spent days trying to backtrack, explain himself, and pretend he wasn't trying to disrespect Nas. But the damage was already done. Once you speak on a legend the wrong way, the culture remembers. And Jim was learning that lesson in real time. As more people weighed in, it became clear that Jim Jones didn't just touch a nerve, he trespassed into sacred territory. Regardless of his hustle or longevity, Jim isn't someone the culture looks to for lyrical breakdowns or hip-hop evaluations. When he questioned Nas's relevance, it felt like someone who wasn't qualified trying to rewrite history. And that's exactly why Pusha T went at him so sharply. Pusha sees Nas as a foundational piece of the art form, the same way writers view Shakespeare or poets view Langston Hughes. Trying to downplay Nas was like trying to erase the roots of an entire movement. And hearing Jim, a rapper known more for swagger than substance, claim Nas wasn't moving anything today sounded insane to anyone who actually pays attention to hip-hop. The crazy part is how Jim's comments didn't even match reality. Nas had just dropped multiple critically acclaimed albums with Hit Boy, winning a Grammy, charting strong, touring worldwide, and gaining a whole new wave of younger fans. His music wasn't dusty, wasn't outdated, wasn't forgotten, it was celebrated. Meanwhile, Jim's recent catalog didn't make anywhere near the same cultural impact. So when he opened his mouth, it came off like he was talking from emotion, not truth. And Pusha T called that out immediately, saying Jim was speaking on something he clearly wasn't informed about. But what made Pusha's clapback really sting was the respect behind it. He wasn't attacking Jim personally, he was defending the culture. He was defending a man who helped build the lane that both he and Jim operate in. He was reminding the world that you don't get to rewrite history because you're bored on a podcast. And Pusha was speaking from a place only another elite MC can speak from. Someone who understands the craft, the pen, the legacy, and the weight Nas carries in every line he writes. Fans also pointed out the irony. Jim Jones, known for Dipset swagger and street anthems, was disrespecting a man whose albums became required reading for every lyricist alive. Jim has always been part of the culture, but Nas shaped the entire language of the culture. The levels just aren't the same. And when Jim saw the backlash hitting him harder than expected, he tried to double back and clarify, but at that point, it was too late. Pusha's words had already stuck, and fans weren't letting Jim off the hook. People started flooding comments with comparisons, catalog breakdowns, and reminders that Nas inspired generations including Jay-Z, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, and even Pusha T himself. Jim couldn't run from that. He couldn't explain around it. He couldn't pretend the backlash was just opinion. The culture had spoken, and they sided with Pusha T. The most embarrassing part for Jim was how quickly the conversation turned from Jim versus Nas into why Jim talking like he's on Nas's level. Because the more fans dug into the situation, the more it looked like Jim was trying to boost his name by poking a legend. People started resurfacing old interviews where Jim took shots at more successful rappers, almost like he had a pattern of using controversy to stay relevant. But this time, the target wasn't a peer, it was Nas, and Pusha T wasn't letting that slide. Pusha said what everybody else was thinking. Jim was speaking from a place of insecurity, not facts. And coming at Nas didn't elevate him, it exposed him. Pusha even hinted that Jim's comments were rooted in frustration about not being taken seriously in hip-hop's upper tier. For years, Jim fought to prove he was more than just Dipset's hype man. And even though he built a respectable solo career and delivered some solid albums, he still wasn't getting the lyrical recognition he wanted. So attacking Nas felt like a shortcut to forcing his name into debates he wasn't qualified for. But that move backfired instantly. Instead of getting the respect he craved, Jim got dragged across social media by fans who reminded him he couldn't question someone whose influence shaped the entire genre. Meanwhile, Pusha T wasn't speaking just as a fan. He was speaking as someone who understands how the rap hierarchy works. Nas stands in a category where only a few people reside. It's not about hit songs or trends. It's about legacy, consistency, growth, and influence. Pusha respects that hierarchy deeply because he knows talent when he sees it. And he knows Nas is untouched when it comes to lyricism and impact. So hearing Jim speak on Nas like he was some washed-up artist triggered a response that came from both loyalty and authenticity. What made things even worse for Jim was the way fans started clowning him. They brought up his past losses, his failed attempts to spark beef, and moments where he tried too hard to be controversial. They pointed out the hypocrisy, Jim calling Nas irrelevant while Nas was winning Grammys and doing sold-out shows, all while Jim was fighting for attention on social media. That narrative stuck hard, and Pusha's calm, cutting response made Jim look even more out of line. By the time the dust started settling, Jim realized he wasn't just in a back and forth with Pusha. He was in a culture-wide conversation where he was getting cooked by everybody. Not because people hate Jim, but because Nas is someone you don't play with. Not lyrically, not historically, not casually, and not in interviews where you're trying to sound edgy. Jim learned the hard way. Some names in hip-hop come with weight, and when you disrespect them, the entire culture checks you, not just one rapper. As the conversation matured, Pusha T took it even deeper, explaining why protecting Nas's name matters on a cultural level. He said Nas isn't just a rapper. He's part of the foundation that allowed artists like himself, Jim Jones, and most of the new generation to even exist in the industry today. Nas introduced a level of lyricism, depth, and storytelling that elevated hip-hop in the 90s and pushed the entire genre into new territory. Illmatic wasn't just a classic, it was a blueprint. It was written, solidified the bar for penmanship. His career longevity is something only a few rappers in history have ever matched. So when Jim spoke like Nas hadn't moved anything, it felt disrespectful not just to Nas, but to the entire genre. Pusha also pointed out how Nas continues to evolve, something many rappers from his era failed to do. While others fizzled out, Nas adapted, grew, matured, and found new creative partnerships that transformed his sound without compromising his identity. His work with Hit Boy wasn't nostalgia, it was rebirth. And the success of that trilogy proved Nas's pen is still sharper than most rappers half his age. Jim ignoring all that made him look uninformed, and Pusha highlighting that made his argument even stronger. Fans also noticed how Jim suddenly shifted his tone once Pusha spoke. He started sounding more cautious, more respectful, almost like he realized he stepped into a ring he had no business entering. But at that point, the conversation had already taken on a life of its own. The memes, the reactions, the commentary, everybody was weighing in on how Jim underestimated the love the culture still has for Nas. Pusha wasn't attacking Jim out of malice. He was defending the craft. He was defending the high standards that artists like Nas set. And he was sending a message to the entire industry. Stop disrespecting legends for clicks. Stop rewriting history just because you feel bold in front of a microphone. Stop pretending your opinion can override decades of contribution from people who built the house you're standing in. By the end, the message was clear. Jim Jones got humbled, Nas's legacy got protected, and the culture sided with truth. Pusha T didn't embarrass Jim. Jim embarrassed himself. All Pusha did was remind him of the reality. Nas is one of the greatest rappers to ever live, and speaking down on him only exposes how far you still are from his level. And after watching how fast the internet turned on Jim, one thing was obvious. When you play with Nas's name, the entire hip-hop world will remind you exactly who you're dealing with.